What we're looking at in this video is writing the equation of a line given a point and a slope where you have a word problem or some kind of real world situation. So in number one, a college charges $200 per credit hour for part-time students taking fewer than 12 credits. Let T be the total cost in dollars for a part-time student taking C credits. Write the equation relating T and C. Now a lot of students look at that and right away they get overwhelmed by the math of it and looking at T and C. What may help you is to just create a little table of values. So C is the number of credits and T is the total cost. So think about what's the least number of credits in theory that someone could take. If you take 0 credits, you're going to be charged $0. If you take 1 credit, well, what's happening is they're charging $200 per credit. So if you think about that $200 per credit, that's giving you a rate of change or a slope. If you don't recognize that in the table of values, think about 1 credit is going to cost you $200. If you take another credit, it's going to cost you another $200 or $200 twice. So what's happening is the total cost is going up by $200 for every 1 credit hour. And that is your slope or rate of change. So if you're thinking of y equals mx plus b, what we know right now is y equals 200x plus b. And then when you look at trying to find the b value, the vertical intercept or the starting value, well, we know that when the cost is 0, we get $0. So we know that if you put 0 in for the total cost, you took 0 credits. So what's that telling you? Is that 0 is the b value. So in terms of your equation, the total cost T equals 200 times C, the number of credits. Now that's something I expect you to be able to look at and be able to get. But again, my point to this is, and I'm not going to do that on every single question here, I want to make the point that if you make a table of values based on the description of what's happening, you could use y equals mx plus b and work your way through it. Again, that 200 in the problem comes from just reading $200 per credit. That's telling you the slope. But again, if you don't recognize that, make a table of values that describes the situation, and then you could say y2 minus y1, so that's 200 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0. And that'll give you the 200. And then you substitute in one of your points to find the b value. So our equation here, T equals 200C. Okay, so the rest of these we'll go through faster, and I'll have you actually try most of them, and then I'll just show the answers. I think this is a fairly straightforward once you get the hang of it. In part B, suppose the college decides to implement a $50 activity fee for part-time students. Write an equation relating T and C. So same idea here that they're charging $200 per credit, except now they're going to charge a $50 activity fee. Now be careful here, it's not saying a $50 fee per credit. It's just a one-time $50 fee. So you're only paying that $50 once. So if you want, again, try to make a little table for C and T. In theory, 0 credits, they're going to charge you $50 now. If you take 1 credit, now they're going to start bringing in the credit hours. So add 200 to that is 250. So 1 credit is going to cost you 250. 2 credits is going to cost you another 200 or 450. Now notice the change in the total cost is going up by 200 every time for every 1 increase in the credit hours. So again, that's telling you the slope is $200 per credit. Now that $50 activity fee, that says now that you're starting your total cost at $50 rather than at 0. So your total cost, you could write it this way, starting at $50 and then adding $200 for every credit. And you can see that'll match up with the table of values. So another way to look at it, Your total cost has your starting fee of $50 plus $200 for every credit. Okay, so I want you to try the next couple, and I'll put the answers up just to save time on this. And again, if you need to, make a little table of values and go from there. But the point of this is when you read through a word problem, if you're given a point and the slope, write the equation of the line. So again, to recognize that you're given a slope, that means you have, like in part A, or number 1, $200 per credit. Dollars per credit is a rate of change or slope. So they're telling you what the slope is. So that's how you recognize when they give you a slope. Okay, so the rest of them, pause the video and I'll put the answers up. Okay, so number 2, the caterer is charging $400 plus $12 per person. So the total cost is starting at $400 and adding $12 for every person. So if one person attends, so it's only if you're there, that'd be my party, you have the total cost is $400 plus $12 once. If 2 people show up, you have $400 plus $12 twice, and so on. Okay, and then moving on to number 3. The health aide is receiving $120 per shift at work, plus a 40 cent or $0.4 per mile to get to their clients. In part A, your total pay for the aide is going to be the $120, that's their base pay, and then M, the number of miles they drive, they're going to get 40 cents per mile or $0.4. So the total pay starts at $120 and adds $0.4 for every mile. So if they drive 1 mile, they're going to add 0.4 once. If they drive 10 miles, they're going to add 0.4 10 times, which will be $4 because you move the decimal one place, right? If M was 10. So there's your equation for the total pay. And then if you drive 50 miles, just substitute that into your equation. And then if they're paid 128, that means their total pay is 128. And they end up driving 20 miles. Okay, so moving along to the second page, just a few more examples of the same kind of thing. In number 4, they tell you that the number of subscribers to a certain service decreases at a rate of 500 subscribers per month since they reach their peak number of subscribers of 20,000. So X equals 0 represents the month when they reach their peak number, and Y is the number of subscribers. So the wording on this is a little bit awkward because of the reaching their peak number, but that's basically your starting point. Okay, all that means is they're starting at their peak number, 20,000. That's when you're starting to write the equation of your line. So to make a small table of values and then sketch a graph relating X and Y, a sketch of the graph, notice there's no grid here, so you don't need to worry about scaling it. A sketch is just so you can get an idea of what's happening with the relationship. Okay, so I'll put the answers up there. So there's a table of values. Again, they started at 20,000 after 0 months. After 1 month, they lost 500 to get down to 19,500, and so on. So you can see what's happening is the number of subscribers decreases by 500, so down 500 every 1 month. So that's your slope, and they tell you that in the question. They're losing 500 subscribers per month. So the sketch of the graph, again, not to be too crazy here, X is your number of months, Y is their number of subscribers. We started up at 20,000 and decreased by 500 per month, so just show a decreasing line. So you can see that the number of subscribers is decreasing as the month goes on. So then to write an equation relating X and Y, again, they give you the slope, but you can figure out the slope from your table. Negative 500 per every 1 month. And then you have to find the B value, the starting value. Well, the starting value was 20,000. Take away 500 every month. And then 12,000 subscribers using your equation. So we're going to take our equation. 12,000 subscribers is a Y value. And when you solve that, you end up with 16 months. Okay, number 5 is a similar question. And again, the goal of this worksheet is just to practice these. Rather than just give you 1 or 2 and then be done with it, I want you to do several of these to practice. So try number 5, and I'll put the answers up. Okay, so they tell you that the percentage is decreasing by 2.1% per year. So the equation relating T and P, we started at 72%, decreased by 2.1% every year. So your equation, P equals 72 minus 2.1 times T. Okay, and then part B, this one is a little bit trickier. There's 240 students enrolled in the program in 2017. How many graduates would you predict? Well, notice that the equation that we wrote gives the percentage of graduates after T years since 2005. So we have 2 things here in part B. 240 students enrolled and 2017 as the year. 2017, we can turn that into a T value. But the 240, that is not a T value or a percentage. So that 240 is not part of the problem yet. In 2017, that's a T value of 12. Okay, so if we substitute 12 into the T value in our equation, what that'll find for us is the percentage that graduated. So when we do that, you end up with 57.6% that graduated. So they're saying that 57.6% of those enrolled, the 240 enrolled, those are the number that will graduate, 57.6% of them. So you need to take 57.6% of 240, and that'll give you the number of grads. So multiply, not 57.6, but it's a percentage. So 0.576 times 240, and that gives you 138.24, which you can round down to 138. So 138 graduates in 2017. So that's a good example of a question where you really need to pay attention to the units and what your equation is telling you. Again, when you look at this, P is a percentage, T is year since 2005. 240 enrolled students has nothing to do with that equation. So you can't substitute 240 in anywhere in that equation. So those are just a few things you have to be careful of.